Heads or tails, Marty?
Heads.
Heads. Jeff, time to spin that coin, baby. Let's see where it goes. Where does it land? It's up in the air. It's bounced 3 times, and it's heads. Marty.
You know what? I never had the first pick. My brother was 3 years younger than me. When we did heads or tails, like if we went to the driving range or the batting cages, somebody always had to go first, and he'd always get to pick, and he always picked tails. And I don't know if my dad rigged it, but my brother always won. So now I feel like producer Jeff is like my dad. He may have rigged it, and I won. So I'm going to get the start.
He is a goalie dad after all, so this is a good fit.
That's why I like it. Thank you. Okay. The top of my list, and it's not really listed 1 through 10. It's just names that I kind of, did my homework in a certain way. And one player that came up on my list that would be a great fit for the Sabres, and I feel would definitely add a lot to the roster right now, is Tyler Toffoli. So Tyler Toffoli is on my list. There's a guy that, can play a little lower in the lineup if you want him to, but can elevate. Like he can be on the third line, can elevate, can play on the power play, has some grit, some strength, some experience, did win with the LA Kings, and then experienced some movement around when he went to New Jersey and then Montreal and then Winnipeg. So there's definitely some experience there and a veteran leader that would fit really well for me with the Sabres.
Well, did you have a number in mind on what Tyler Toffoli, without quoting AFP on everything, but you can if you want.
I to be honest with you, I did not do that so much on the money allocated, the contract allocated. I'm looking at the player, and I'm going to go off what Craig Button told me at the trade deadline this year when we're in TSN studio. Is if you want somebody, you can make it happen. If you want to make a trade, you can make it happen. If you want to sign a player and whatever, you can make it happen. So that's how I look at it.
And I would assume, far be it from me to do that, but you can get in on this little exercise that we are doing by hitting us up at Sabres Live on X and add to the conversation. So whether you immediately dismiss Marty's first name on the list of Tyler Toffoli, or if you want to end up adding to the lists that we unveil here, please hit us up there at Sabres Live. I think we're doing this in order, so of how it was actually submitted. So if you started with Toffoli, I will start with Steven Stamkos. Now, when I say this, obviously less than 10% of my mind actually believes that this could happen, right? I don't think he's leaving. I don't think there's a lot of prominent UFAs that I don't think are going to leave. But the reason I mentioned Stamkos is because I think he gets a bad rap. I think people think he's older than he is. I think people don't realize the production that he's had, which is 113 goals in the last 3 regular seasons. So accuse me of recency bias all you want. I want players who are playing their best. And in the last 5 years, he's 8th in playoff goals as well. And wouldn't it be amazing for him to be able to add to those totals in his first year as a Buffalo Sabre? Again, what would it look like contractually, term-wise, cap hit? What is the possibility you could ever draw him out of the Sunshine State? Probably not very high. But I'm sorry, when I look at production, expectation, leadership, ability, all of it, I look at Steven Stamkos as an elite character player in this game, and I'm all for it. But
he was
am I optimistic?
On my wish list and on the fits, but I do agree that a guy that can play center or wing would fit really well. The production and he's healthy. It's not like Steven Stamkos is hurt all the time. He got hurt for a while, and there was the leg and everything, but he's been healthy the last few years here, which is a good sign. Okay, I like where you're going. Second for me, so number 3 on our combined list. Jake DeBrusk.
That gets confusing. Just throw the name out.
Again, Jake DeBrusk. And I think Jake DeBrusk is a player that I've loved and hated over the last few years with the Boston Bruins. But when I think of, okay, where do I need a fit on this team? If I'm going to have Thompson and Tuck and Cousins and Quinn and Peterka being in the top 6, let's see what Skinner fits into there. Can Jake DeBrusk play on the left wing with Thompson and Tuck? Can he play on the third line? Can he produce? This is a guy that Boston relied on at times for extra. So and special teams as well. So Jake DeBrusk is a guy on my list. And again, it's not about the contract for me. It's about the player, what he brings to the table. There's a physicality there as well.
Well, I'm enjoying this exercise already because there's only one person that our audience needs to know, actually knows what's coming next, and that's producer Jeff. You and I have not shared these lists. And what's fascinating to me is your two guys so far were not on my list, and I love it. I hope we go 10 for 10. And again,
I know we're not because I know we'll get to
you
some,
cheated.
but
Okay, Jake Gensel, again, probably falls into the category of Steven Stamkos. However, he has played in a non-warm environment before, Pittsburgh, and has had excellent success. And who knows what's going on with Carolina right now? Like, are they going to trade for a GM? There's a lot going on. They also have a ridiculous number of free agent defensemen. And as I predicted a couple of weeks ago when Shayna was on and discussing with us, she thought their number one pursuit would be Gensel to retain him. I'm like, I think this guy's going to market regardless. And it sounds like the latest story today, they're going to take it to July 1st and then play it out and see. Not that he's ruling out Carolina. So if that happens, step forward. You want recency bias? The last 6 years. Now, granted, there's been a couple of years where he hasn't played full seasons, but he's 13th in the league in goals per game. And that's what matters. And he's delivered that, whether it's regular season or, again, I stress, playoffs. So add players that can help you get to your goal and then be successful when those games arrive.
Okay, well, maybe I'm going to go more. I did not have Jake Gensel, so we're 4 for 4 on our list. And I thought about him, and I was like, I'm going to go in a different direction. And again, maybe now I'm going more towards what you've been doing, and I'm going to put Patrick Kane on my list because Patrick Kane went to Detroit, but there was the conversation with Buffalo already. He showed that he was healthy. He showed that he can produce. And I think now would be the time to say a guy like Patrick Kane would fit well with the Buffalo Sabres. I can see him play with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch. I can see what that's going to look like. I can see the production that would be. So now I feel is the best time to look at a Patrick Kane and bring him on and make that fit for the Sabres.
By the way, Scott Burnside will be joining us at the bottom of the hour. We'll do our best to avoid this segment running into that one. So we need to pick up the pace. Yes. And I'm going to zip to my name, which is, again, different than yours. And Kane was not on my list. That's foreshadowing. So Chandler Stevenson, 30 years old, coming off a 4-year deal at $2.75 per. He's a 2-time champ. He's never truly been paid by NHL standards. Yeah. So this is the home run opportunity for him. And how is Vegas going to move forward with their lengthy list of free agents and coveted pieces, especially after a year in which they thought they could win again and didn't? Stevenson, interestingly to me, is 83rd in NHL scoring over the last 3 years.
Yes.
I love him as a player. That's way higher than I would have thought. It also shows you that if you just crest over 50 points a year in 3 straight seasons, you get up into this higher tier of players. Now, we know through simple math and the exercises we accomplished last year when looking at where Thompson would rank league-wide with his salary and where Cousins would rank. So we know that if a player is 83rd in scoring, you're likely potentially going to pay that player $6 to $7 million.
Yes.
I don't think Chandler Stevenson's in that category. I think he had a little bit of a dip this year, but that's also based on circumstance, injuries, surrounding players, all the rest of it. I would love if they could come in at 5 or lower on a multi-year deal with Chandler Stevenson. Just a good fit throughout the top 9.
His production this year at 5-on-5 dropped a little bit in the expected goals for and against, but we do have our first match because the next player on my list was Chandler Stevenson. And the way that I see the fit for the Sabres is Thompson, Cousins, Stevenson, right? And you know what that allows? That allows Dylan Cousins to probably be more of an offensive type player because Chandler Stevenson would be your shutdown center, the guy that would play there. And we saw what Cousins did in an offensive role at the World Championship, and I think that would really match well. So Stevenson is the next guy on my list. So Duffer, we're back to you with your fourth player.
And it won't surprise you because I've mentioned his name repeatedly. 28-year-old Dakota Joshua coming off a career year, 184 games played at age 28. Yeah. That's not much mileage on a very, very, very good pro player who showed his value in regular season and playoffs. So whatever the number turns out to be, I think Dakota Joshua should be highly coveted by the Sabres.
This is the one player I did not have on my list thinking there's no way it's happening. There's no way Vancouver lets him go. And if they do, there's going to be teams that are going to throw a lot of money at him. So I'm just thinking it's not happening, but he should have been on my list. Okay, next for me is Sean Monahan. Kind of like Tyler Toffoli and a little bit of Chandler Stevenson is a guy that plays the middle of the ice that could play your third line, could be on your power play. What's the problem last year? The power play didn't function. Monahan went to Winnipeg and the power play in Winnipeg just took off, right? I think he would be a good fit for the Sabres. So Sean Monahan is the next player on my list. So now I got 5. You got to go to number 5, Duff.
Yeah, he was not on my list. Yakov Trenin, also, predator bias, which I often fall victim to. 299 NHL games played. Of course, he did not play his last game with the Predators. He was a deadline pickup by the Avs, got a little dinged up in the playoffs, which ended up being shorter for the Avs than they wanted. He's just a bigger presence in the bottom 6. And I still think there's capability for him to be back in that 15 to 20 goal range. So just a lot of tools that Buffalo might not exactly have right now in Yakov Trenin. So that's what's appealing most to me as a guy who can just find his depth role among your group of 12.
Well, that's our second match because I do have Yakov Trenin on my list. Mixing a goalie Yaniv Peretz and Yakov Trenin, so I'm mixing them both. He's on my list, and the reason he's on my list is, again, I'm looking at filling in the bottom 6, and I'm also looking at value here. I think you're going to get really good value on a contract for Trenin if he goes later in free agency. I'm not thinking it's a July 1 signing, but that's maybe a July 4th, 5th, or 6th type of signing there. So I have Trenin on my list.
I'll bet you on that one. I think he goes on July 1st real quick. Will Carrier, and that's not a surprise. Loved him from the moment he joined this organization from St. Louis. He is as mean and physical as they come in an understated way in the NHL. And I think that's the beauty of him, is he is so sneaky tough and so appreciated by his teammates. You can never have enough of Will Carriers on your roster, in my opinion, or you need at least one, because he is again, I don't have massive expectations for him offensively. I like the rest of the character that Carrier is.
Yeah, and this is our third match, Duffer. So we've made a hat trick of a match here on our list of 10. Will Carrier was on my list also. Kind of a welcome home, say, hey, you know what? You snuck out to the islands of misfit toys when the Vegas Golden Knights did their, expansion draft. But we'd love to have you back and play the same way you play. Don't try to do more. It's not because you're UFA and now maybe you get paid a certain way that you have to do something different. I think Will Carrier would be a good fit as well for the bottom 6.
I think Alex Tuck would appreciate being a teammate of Will Carrier's once again. Anthony Duclair, soon to be 29. Could Buffalo be his 9th NHL team? I would be perfectly okay with it if it happens.
A lot of speed and a guy that, again, can kill penalties, can play on your power play, can play anywhere in your lineup. So Anthony Duclair, I like it. I think that is somebody that I've looked for in the last few years. Where is he going to go? Where is he going to be? I forgot him on my list. That is a omission by me. So not a match.
Really? Oh, cool.
I probably should have put Anthony Duclair out there. I've loved what he's done wherever he's gone, especially in the first year. And I think that's what the Sabres need now. In the first year of, trying to bounce back, Duclair's done that.
Agreed. And we can get into that discussion another day as far as contractual carrots and how they hang in front of players.
Yeah.
And the incentive to have a massive year individually and collectively, and whether that helps drive the bus back to the postseason.
Bet on yourself. Sometimes it's a good place to be. Jordan Martinook is a player that I really like, again, as a bottom 6, maybe even a fourth liner. And you say, well, why are we targeting fourth liners? Because every position helps. Every player helps. Jordan Martinook not only I feel can bring you a little bit of offense from the fourth line, can play many different roles, has had some physicality, great locker room guy. Everybody loves him. He's a great personality. I think this fan base would absolutely love Jordan Martinook. So he is on my list of players to kind of keep an eye on as to what develops for those role players.
They never won, and that's the only reason, as in they never won the big prize in the last couple of years. That's the only thing preventing Martinook from being cult hero status in Carolina.
Yes.
Like, so good. And it's funny because I'm going down that same path also with Carolina based on his last 3 seasons as a pro. And Stefan Nason is 31, and he's living his best life as a pro these last 3 years. Meaningful, massive contributions in the AHL 3 seasons ago, followed by his best 2 NHL seasons. I don't know if I agree with the AFP projections as far as what kind of contract he could get at this stage of his career, but I still think he's a unique, he would be unique to Buffalo. I don't think he was as unique in Carolina because I felt like between he and Martinook and a couple others, they had that incredible presence in their bottom 6.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with Stefan Nason. The production has surprised me over the last few years, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a good thing. And that's what you need. You need players that are going to come and give you more, kind of like what 2 years ago was with the Sabres. Everybody gave you more. Yep. It was a great year. You give less? Not so much. Okay. Next player for me is Thomas Tatar. And this is a weird one because I'm like, well, maybe he's past his prime a little bit, but I feel like Tatar still has some production in him and has a little bit to play for. Last year didn't work as well as he wanted to, right? He got traded, didn't have the production going to Colorado. He moved around. I go back to 2 years ago more with Tatar and where he's been. So
is that a Lindy thing?
Could be. That's a good point. Could be a very much Lindy. I'm more focusing on Tatar saying, I'm going to work so hard this summer. I'm going to come in and really show everybody last year was just a fluke. But I think Thomas Tatar would be a fit for the Sabres and maybe even a better Lindy project right there.
Well, you know, when you do those fantasy drafts and you're in it and you loop around, like the person at the bottom gets 2 picks in a row because they were so far removed from the top. I'm going to slam out a couple here because they're goaltenders. And sources say you don't have any goaltenders on your list, so this won't surprise anyone.
And
it's
wearing
not
pants, so that's why.
Yes, certainly not wearing goalie pants. Chris Driedger and Calvin Pickard. And again, these are not names meant to excite. These are names meant to occupy positions of importance if depth is required beyond the top 2 netminders, which presumably will be Luukkonen and Levi. We talked about Driedger last week on the show. He's having a fine run once again in Coachella Valley as the Firebirds are 2 games away from getting back to the Calder Cup final. He's 30 years old. He still has a limited body of work in the NHL. He's still got a lot to prove. He could be that in-between guy, highest level AHL, next man up in the NHL. And I think Pickard's the same way. At age 32, he's had a taste of something he could have never imagined this year based on how the Oilers were constructed at the start of the year. And I'm all for the experience of getting all the way to the final, feeling like you had a role in it, which Pickard has done. And those are 2 of the depth and quality character names that I think could round out things free agent wise.
And
for
I
Buffalo.
feel that with Rochester being in a really bit of a turnaround type of year, right? Some players moving up probably to Buffalo, new coach. We'll see where that goes. Goaltending needs to be a solid position for them next year to add stability. So a good number 3 in the organization with Driedger or Pickard or anybody else, but those are 2 really good names. My 10th name, my last name on the list, it was not like the others because it's a restricted free agent. So somebody that you'd have to trade for or offer sheet. I don't think an offer sheet would come in his player's way, but maybe more of a trade. It's Marty Necas. So let's stick with our Carolina Hurricanes. You had Gensel and Nason, I had Martinook. So we're going to stick with Carolina, pick apart the Carolina Hurricanes. Necas, I think there's a lot of baggage there. Dad talking to the media and everything. But given an opportunity on the top line, playing top power plays, I think the numbers are going to go up even more than where they've been. He didn't have that opportunity in Carolina. I think it's waiting to unlock and would fit that age core that the Sabres have looked at the last few years here, but with NHL experience. So Martin Necas is the RFA on my list.
He's also a modern day king of 3-on-3 heroics. So keep that in mind as he is an elite overtime threat.
Got to get those points. Got to get those overtime points and those empty netters, Duffer. That's good.
I know. That's what we should do. Top 10 empty net players on our free agency list. It might be a little redundant. Scott Burnside.
Still available to come and be in the shootout? No?
I don't know. He'd probably still be good at it.
Hurricane.
Yeah, he'd probably still be good at it.